Ready? Good evening. This regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is being held Tuesday, October the 19th, 2021. The meeting is being called to order and the time is 6 o'clock. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. We do have a special guest in house. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dominic Montalongo from Cactus Trails. He's a fifth grader. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dominic. Let's proceed with the next item on the agenda, Interim Superintendent's comments. Ms. Carmona.
Good evening, President Morales, members of the board, and audience here present. First of all, I'd like to wish a happy early birthday to Board President David Morales on Wednesday, November the 10th. And also, I'd like to introduce a couple of new leaders at SISD. First of all, welcome Stephen Fernandez as the new principal of Enzer Middle School. Welcome Dr. Danielle Navarez as the new assistant principal at Sergeant Jose F. Carrasco Elementary School. And welcome to Raul Villalobos as the new health clinic physician assistant. Also, I'm not sure if you know this, but this month is often called the Bandtober because it is the peak of the marching band season, and there are numerous competitions, including the UIL, region and area competitions, and our very own, very popular March Fest. This evening, I'd like to give a big shout out to the hundreds of marching band students who have been performing to showcase their musical and performance talents. I have watched all of our SISD marching band shows, and they are truly spectacular. These students wake up early, they stay up late, they perform in the heat, and they are also practicing in any kind of weather. They also keep up with their studies and always perform with their heart. I am very proud of all our dedicated band students and their hardworking directors. And I am very thankful for the Band Booster program and the parents for their endless work, love, and encouragement. These marching band students are our why and why we do what we do. And I thank everyone in the community who supports them. We are Team SISD, and we lead with our hearts as we keep all our students in our heart to make them successful. Also, we have a couple of events that are coming up. SISD is happy to host our annual Trick or Treat event on Friday, October the 29th at 4 p.m. This year, our event will take place outdoors in our DSC front parking lot and sidewalk area. Each department will have a table set up and will pass candy out to our students as they drive through. Thank you. This concludes my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Carmona. We're going to proceed to item 4, Board Honors. Mr. Daniel Escobar.
Good evening, President Morales, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona. My name is Daniel Escobar, Chief Communications Officer for the district, and it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's recognitions. If you'll all please step down to receive our honorees. Our first recognition honors a Pebble Hills High School student who won the Franklin Mountain State Park Junior Ranger Patch Design Competition. She earned first place in one of 3 levels in the competition, which included numerous outstanding creations entered in the contest. The design will be used on the patch that will be distributed to children ages 5 through 13 as they complete one of 3 levels in the state's park program to become junior rangers. Congratulations to Pebble Hills High School student Ivy Montelongo. Joining her this evening is her teacher, Veronica Chaparro. If we can have the two of you back up front and center to join our trustees and Dr. Carmona for your photo. There we go. I think that's good. Yeah. Couple more, keep looking for, everyone got it? One more. Congratulations once again. Our second recognition is this evening honors a first place winner of the elementary division for the 4th annual Print Those Pics cell phone photography contest. This student was one of 12 talented individuals who placed among 4 divisions, elementary, middle school, and high school, and employee. Her artwork was selected among more than 200 entries that were submitted into the contest. Congratulations to Chester Jordan Elementary student, Aria Munoz. Over. We're gonna have you right over here. Miss Flores is gonna put you, get you right front and center. All right. Keep smiling. All right, congratulations once again, Aria. And that concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you so much.
We're going to go ahead and move to item 5, Board of Trustees business. A, consider approval of Generation Texas Month Proclamation, October-November 2021. At this time, we'll have our presenter, Ms. Tammy McCabe.
Good evening, President Morales, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona, and members of the board. I'm Tammy McCabe, Director of School Counseling, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you 3 Team SISD students who will be reading the Generation Texas Proclamation. We have the third grader from Bill Seibert School, Alyssa Gonzalez. Sixth grader from Jane A. Hambrick School, Audrey Huareca. And senior from Montwood High School, Rick Xavier Monsivalles.
Good evening. Whereas Texas Education Code, Chapter 29.911, requires each middle school, junior high school, and high school to provide students with information about higher education options. Whereas the missions of the Socorro Independent School District is to maximize our children's academic, artistic, athletic, and social skills.
Whereas the mission of the Socorro Independent School Guidance and Counseling Program is to provide a comprehensive development guidance and counseling program that will maximize the academic, personal, social, and career competencies of all students so that they may realize personal post-secondary goals. Whereas students who attend institutions of higher education attain a wide range of personal, financial, and other lifelong benefits.
Whereas the demand for graduates of higher education globally has increased and will continue to grow. Whereas the counselors, faculty, and staff of Socorro Independent School District campus realize the importance of educating students on higher education, including higher education options, admissions requirements, availability of financial aid, and financial aid requirements. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim October and November 2021 as Generation Texas Month.
We ask the board to accept the proclamation as read.
Motion to approve.
Any further questions? We can go ahead and approve it here. A motion was made by Mr. Eddie Mena and a second by Mr. Paul Guerra. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McKibben.
Thank you.
And students. Our next item, 5B, consider approval of Red Ribbon Week proclamation, October 23rd through the 31st, 2021. Go ahead, Ms. McCabe.
Yes. Thank you again, President Morales, Interim Superintendent, Dr. Carmona, and members of the board. Our students will now read the Red Ribbon Proclamation.
Whereas the Socorro Independent School District values the health and safety of all our students and our community, and whereas substance abuse is particularly damaging to one of our most valuable resources, our children, and
Whereas it is the goal of Red Ribbon Week and the Socorro Independent School to involve families, schools, businesses, law enforcement agencies, and service organizations in all aspects of this campaign, and establish an atmosphere that supports awareness, education, and ongoing intuitions to prevent illegal drug use. And whereas Red Ribbon Week is celebrated in honor of Enrique Quique Camara, a federal drug enforcement agent who was killed while investigating a drug cartel. And
Whereas the Red Ribbon Week campaign theme promotes family and individual responsibilities for living healthy, drug-free lifestyles, and there are many activities planned during Red Ribbon Week campaign on campuses throughout Socorro ISD. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Socorro Independent School District Board of Trustees do hereby proclaim October 23rd through October 31st, 2021 as Red Ribbon Week, and encourage students, parents, employees, and our community to participate in drug prevention education activities to demonstrate that our school district and community are committed to being drug-free.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Pablo Barrera and a second by Mr. Eddie Mena. Any questions at this time? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And the
Ms. Kim.
students have a ribbon and a red ribbon bracelet to give you as well, if that's okay.
Great job, students.
Great job, guys.
Excellent
Thank
job.
you so much. Thank you. Did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and move to open forum. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and read a statement. I know it's a little lengthy, and I'm going to work to have it summarized in the future. So if you bear with me, I'll read it as quick as I can. The district is a local government body charged with serving the educational needs of all school children in our district. And board meetings must be focused on meeting this charge. The district board meetings are public meetings under the Texas Open Meetings Act to conduct the business of the district. They are not, however, meetings of the public. Therefore, all persons in attendance are expected to display civility and decorum. Individuals shall refrain from using harmful and offensive content, such as libel, slander, defamation, obscenities, or fighting words, for respect of the rights and the reputation of others. We greatly appreciate those individuals who have requested to speak to the board during open forum or in regards to specific agenda items. We are bound by certain time constraints in order to cover all the items on the agenda, and therefore we must limit presentations to 5 minutes. Please respect the rights of others in your presentation. By law, the board cannot take action upon or discuss any item which is not posted on tonight's agenda. But we will definitely give all presentations our serious consideration. Thank you. Let's proceed to open forum. Our first speaker, we have Mr. Jaime Diaz.
Muy buenas tardes, Board. Es Carmona. Soy de transportación. Venimos a hablar para un pay increase a las personas que ya tenemos más de 10, 15, 20 años, porque las personas que están entrando nuevas casi nos alcanzaron ya, ¿me entiende? Y queremos un raise, o sea, que nos den un increase raise, para que todo trabaje mejor con nosotros. Y es todo lo que les puedo decir, ¿me entiende? Para eso veníamos, para pedir eso. Ok, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Yes. Our next speaker is Miss Melissa Melendez.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Melissa Melendez. I also work for the Transportation Department. And I'm here also to speak in behalf of an increase for the ones that have been here for 5, 10, 15 years. We noticed that the pay rate has increased for the people coming in, but not for the ones that have been here. We haven't seen a scale raise. And I'm also wanted to say that you have very good transportation drivers and monitors. And that every time that, since I started working here for this school year that we came back, I heard Miss Jackie talk on the radio that they need help. And the dispatchers and our team is willing, to help out. They pick up that mic and say, I'm willing to help, I want to help, I want to help. And now I'm asking you to help us. I'm picking up that same radio and asking you to help us out and getting a pay increase for the drivers that have been here for the 5, 10, 15 years. And we've noticed that other work has, like they have, their pay rate is higher than ours, and they deliver boxes and throw them out the truck while we deliver kids. We transport kids and their precious cargo that we take to and from school. So in mind, I wanted to say that if you can please keep that in mind and give us a pay increase so that way we can stay working here. We don't have to go somewhere else because we love what we do. And with that being said, I want to say thank you and God bless.
Our next speaker is Angelica Soto.
Good evening, Board President Morales, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Mrs. Carmona. I am Angelica Soto, President for the Socorro Education Association. I am speaking tonight on behalf of SISD bus drivers. The drivers feel it is unfair that their salary was not adjusted when the starting salary for new bus drivers was raised to attract new hires. However, in attempting to hire more bus drivers, the district did not consider that it needed to also retain the experienced drivers it already employs. Great bus drivers. This has led to a situation the district has encountered before, where the difference in salaries between newer employees and established employees has greatly narrowed. As an example, a bus driver with 20 years is only making $3.50 more than a new employee according to the latest salary. And as I tell everyone, there's no substitute for experience. These are bus drivers that work very hard to take care of our kids, to make sure that they're safe and that they arrive always, no matter what the weather. As was mentioned at the last board meeting, the bus drivers who are not able to drive out-of-town field trips are having a difficult time financially, as they count on that extra duty pay to supplement their income to make ends meet. If they were to be compensated fairly, this would not be an issue. They're also having to work outside the district, and I'm worried that this might become something that they would say, well, you know, I'm not receiving enough compensation, I might as well take a higher paying job. I call on the district to do the right thing and fix the salary scale in a fair manner before SISD loses any more drivers to another employer paying a more competitive salary. Also, please consider the bus monitor's pay because it is also unfair according to their experience. It's a very compressed salary, the minimum and the max. And so people who barely start are making almost as much as people who've been here 15 years. Thank you in advance for your consideration of this request. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Soto. Our next speaker is Mr. Tom Ianton.
Good evening, President Morales, Ms. Carmona, Interim Superintendent, members of the board. I'm going to give you a little update on our October the 8th golf tournament that we just had a week or so ago. We had 39 teams and 156 golfers. This is by far the largest tournament we've had. And I want to especially thank the board members that attended and played, Mr. Morales, Mr. Mena, Mr. Guerra, who were out there, and of course, Ms. Carmona, who attended. Also, I'd like to thank the SISD Foundation Board. They were there in support. And all of the volunteers. We could not put this on except for the volunteers. We did a tremendous job. The 2021 tournament raised $69,250 for the first tournament portion of it, the scholarship. That is almost double what we did 2019. The Gracie Tovar Scholarship raised $22,850 for a total of $92,060. So we are still reconciling this. It might change a little bit, but those are good solid numbers as of today. Thank you.
Barrington.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Our next item is 8, consent agenda. Before we go through that, I have to read with, oh, sorry, there's Mr. Harrington again, I'm sorry. You're up. District reports. Him and I both thought that he was going to stay up there and just carry on.
Well, good evening again. Okay, the facility report begins on your page 12 in your booklet, and I've got some slides here. I know that these are kind of hard to read on the screen, but I'll be brief and show you a lot more pictures, hopefully. Socorro High School, we're at a little over 57%, approaching 60% complete on that. We are still naturally working with the existing 2 phases that have been completed and doing the punch list on that. We are continuing to work on the demolition of the fine arts area and 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000 wing of the original building. The black box and the main kitchen was completed and was turned over, and they are using those as we speak. Data rooms and installation is ongoing. Installation of the owner appliance is ongoing, and we are continuing to do the HVAC airflow balance and landscaping. Here's some the aerial picture on the side. You can see that we opened the first phase of the student parking lot, the one that's closer to Rio Vista, and now we're beginning to work on the second portion of the parking lot, which will basically almost double the capacity of the student parking lot. And then you can see that this is some of the exterior views. Here is the landscaping ongoing, view of the CTE building and the bus drop-off. And again, the demolition, as I stated, and the next phase is ongoing and on the classroom wings by the library. We are also continuing to work on the fine arts area. We got the buildings removed. On the screen on the left, you can see where we'll be building some additional fine arts additions to that, and then the one on the right is the existing auditorium that is under construction. Here are some finished pictures of the culinary and the cosmetology, and then we go into our next project, which is Montwood, and we're over 90% complete on that. All the green has been completed on the first floor, and we are continuing to do our punch work and turning over certain areas and repairing certain areas in that as we go. The second or the third level is the orange area. That should be green now. That's the rest of the science labs. We turn those over, and so they have functions of all of their science facilities. And here are the third floor science classrooms, as you can see them completed. Next project is America's High School. We're at a little over 83% complete on that. We are doing a lot of interior demo work on the little orange area. Everything in this green has been completed. Here again, everything is green has been completed. This shows an aerial looking back towards the new fine arts addition and back towards the school. This is the alternate or the addition along Pelicano that is completed, and then the view of the landscape next to the fine arts area. And then here, that orange area I mentioned before on the floor plan, this is some of the demolition work that is being done on the interior of the building. Same thing here in the culinary and the walk-in coolers and freezer areas. So we're doing a lot of demo work and getting that ready to start our finished construction on that. Next project is El Dorado. We're at 80% complete on that, and everything in green is pretty much completed. We're working on the orange and actually starting to work on some of the blue areas. And then this shows the roof where we've been working on the roof on El Dorado, re-roofing that. And then you can see that we've put HVAC refrigeration in the locker rooms, both boys and girls. You can see the new ductwork and everything in there. The cafeteria on the left, all those bright colors are the existing cafeteria. If you look beyond, you can see where we've added into the courtyard and expanding the cafeteria into that courtyard area. And then this is the new gallery wing that's going up. We got some demolition in the dance room and, of course, work in the black box. The new student activity complex, that's an agenda item a little bit later. We will discuss that. We did receive bids on that, and y'all have seen these pictures. Auxiliary gyms, package 1 is completed. You accepted the deductive change order last month of a little over $100,000 for package 1. Package 2, we are finalizing those. We are all of the schools are using those schools, have received their tentative COs, and we have occupied those, and we're about 98% complete there. And then this is what the package 2 schools look like. Package 3 is approaching 86%, almost 90%, and we are on schedule to complete that here before the contract term is up. And here you can see Campestre, Escontrias, HD Hilly, Waco, and then Rojas. You can see Rojas, we're preparing to put down the flooring in package 3. Support services, we are, technology has been moving into that. We're 98%. We're beginning to close that project out. So they are slowly moving in their department, and they should be almost completely moved in, if not now. You can see that the main entrance and then the flexible seating in the flex area is being installed, and that's on both sides of that flexitorium. So those pull out, and you have a lecture style seating in that rooms for the technology building. And then there's a typical computer lab. Pebble Hills High School lighting project and field modification is 95% complete, and you can see some of the pictures of those. And we have tweaked the lighting on that project with Musco, and we should be closing this project out fairly quick. East Lake High School, this particular contractor didn't want to get paid until it was totally complete, so I don't have a percentage, but he is almost complete, if not, because you can see this is the night lighting. We actually have some drone pictures from up high, how the lighting on all of our fields basically shine on the field and not in the adjacent areas. But you can see that we have the lighting completed at East Lake. Our next project is the Ben Narbeth Elementary School and East Lake Middle School. We're approaching over 40% complete on those projects. This is an aerial. Anything to the right that are in white is basically the elementary school, which is going to be completed in July of '22. And everything left of that is the middle school. We are working with a lot of interior and exterior work on the play courts for the middle school and the elementary school. Here we got the elementary cafeteria, And then you can see stud work going up on the classroom areas in the elementary school. The classroom areas, again, some are being dried in, and then we have, of course, all of our electrical and plumbing and mechanical stub outs. Here's the middle school, and you can see we're working on the fine arts in the classroom wing, where we're putting up the structural steel and putting the deck in and getting ready to close that in and roof that over and start the drywall on the new East Lake Middle School, which is scheduled to be completed in December of '22 with opening in July of '23. That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Now move to item 8, consent agenda. Before we do so, we have a speaker that will address a particular item. The item is F2C. Purchasing cooperatives by board number 21-004, Masters Transportation. Our speaker. Item purchasing cooperative? Oh, C, I'm sorry. A, to be corrected. Also, at this time, we'll have Mr. Tommy Hill and Ms. Rosie Perez.
Good evening, members. Good evening, President Morales, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona, and members of the board. My name is Rosie Perez, and I am a proud advocate of the members of West Texas Alliance. I am here today with our Vice President, Mr. Tom Hill, with regards to concerns with item 8, consent agenda F2A, as stated, the purchase of the Collins Type A buses. It is our understanding that these buses will be used to transport small groups of students by our teachers and our coaches. Once again, adding more duties to our teachers and our coaches, a duty that makes them feel extremely uncomfortable taking on a level of responsibility that is significant and an obligation they feel pressured to accept.
In addition, on these buses circumvent the safety regulations of public school buses. This is the same tactic used by IDEA charter schools. By having these buses in a color other than yellow, that they're going to be white, that takes off your school bus restriction. The passenger capacity of 14 persons, where it's not going over 16, well, there's your passenger endorsement. Since these don't have air brakes, there's your CDL. So they want to place these at high schools so you can have school bus drivers driving these. It's very, very, very bad. And with the people driving these, they are not to the same regulations that we go through. They will not be going through standard drug testing, monthly drug testing, random, which only transportation does because we do drive buses. There is no talk about that. This will, in effect, drive opportunities away from our hardworking bus drivers. And you heard them earlier. I mean, come on, we got to be listening. This week, SISD is honoring our wonderful transportation department. Is this the way we honor them? By coming to the school board meeting, by putting more buses in teachers' hands? This is not the way we honor them. This is like the worst thing you could be doing. We ask you to investigate this and do what's right for our employees. I leave you with this. Would you feel comfortable with putting your kids on these buses? No, they're not a trained CDL driver. And I don't think the teachers want to be driving these. I don't think the coaches want to be driving these. Thank you very much.
At this time, are there any items to be pulled?
Yes.
Yes.
8E4, 8F,
8, the first one, please, again? 8,
8E4,
4, okay.
8F, 2A.
Okay, 8F2A, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other items?
Motion to approve excluding the two items noted by Mr. Barrera.
Second.
President Morales, administration recommends to pull 8C just to update.
I'm sorry, I was ready to say that. I was just about ready to. Let me go ahead and read that for you. Administration is pulling consent agenda item 8C, request for the use of facilities for separate consideration. Ms. Macias, by all means.
Yes, President Morales, Dr. Carmona, members of the board, administration
The
for...
motion on the table, can we continue
of
with the
course.
motion? I'll amend the motion to include the designated item, which was 8C.
8C, yes, sir. Thank you.
I seconded.
Your second? We have a motion by Mr. Nahara and a second by Ms. Cynthia Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. We're going to go ahead and come back, and we're going to address these items. We'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you.
8C.
For item 8C1, All-Star Football Game and Combine, we've been blessed that year after year, we've always had our Combine here. This year, the Greater El Paso Football Showcase actually approached our athletic department, and they requested to also have the All-Star Football Game. And with that, just wanted to update that our total charges will be $8,451 on the contract versus what is written, which is $5,931. And the updates have to do with safety security. Whenever we looked at the contract, we wanted to make sure that it mirrored what we do at our football games. And with that, Rick Hernandez, along with our athletic department, agreed, and the contract has been updated for your approval.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Are there any further questions? We have a motion by Ms. Cynthia Nahara and a second by Mr. Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Our next item, we're looking at 8E4.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and read it for you. Consider approval of awarding 8E4. Miscellaneous operational supplies. Go ahead, Mr. Barrera.
Yes, you know what, I just want to go ahead. I was looking at the contracts. I wanted to see if the board will accept removing Insco Company, because I did realize that, Mr. Guerra, you are on there as part of one of the contacts, primary contacts. So to avoid any conflict of interest, I think in the best interest of the district, we should go ahead and remove that company from the contract.
So President Morales, Ms. Carmona, members of the board, before we discuss that, I do want to state that the item that's listed, the maximum amount listed, $300,000, is incorrect. It should read $400,000. So whatever motion is made by the board, if they can please include that amount when adopting the motion. Thank you.
On that item that Mr. Barrera is discussing, correct?
Yes, sir.
From 300 to 400.
That's correct.
I want to make it clear for our public. Thank you.
Just so the board's aware, just so Mr. Barrera knows that when we all, thank you, Mr. for bringing that up. Thank you for caring. But just so the board's aware, when we all sign up to run for the board, so the public's aware of this, I was gonna abstain, like I've done every other year. When we all sign up for the board, when we run for the board of office, we all have a business, or we run for public office, and I do work for Insco Distributing, and I've been there for 12 years. And when I do sign up, and I did put an application, and the company I work for got part of this board package. And a prior board member has asked for a vendor before. So we all sign a confidentiality. Attorney, Mr. Blanco, and we all fill out applications saying that we all can run for the board and fill out paperwork saying that we are a vendor. Nothing to hide, and Mr. Blanco's aware of that, and we all do that before.
Yes, sir. So long as the board member properly discloses that
Correct.
and fills out the proper paperwork, and so long as they abstain from any items, there's nothing that would prohibit that.
Before, no, the board members brought this up. Obviously, Mr. Barrera is targeting me. Obviously, he's brought it up. So if anybody else feels that they want to bring it up, I got nothing to hide, but obviously, Mr. Barrera does. But thank you for bringing it up, Mr. Barrera.
So I'm making a motion to approve at 400,000 with the removal of INSCO company.
400,000, INSCO is not, if you look at that product, and if Mr. Barrera would read the board package,
And I'm not targeting you just
it's
for the record.
$400,000, but if you would read it.
It's just to avoid conflict of
If
interest.
you would read it, it says $300,000, but notice he didn't bring up the dollar amount. If you would know how to read the amount, there was a misprint. The amount says 300,000, but there was a misprint for $400,000. If you read the board package, he would find out the dollar amount.
If I obviously read that, I would have read that. I saw that too.
Obviously, he didn't bring that out. There's over 20 vendors here. Nobody's, I'm not bringing up 400, my company, the company I work for is not gonna be $400,000.
So the amount of $400,000 is in the aggregate for those vendors that are listed. We may do business, we may not do business. It all depends on the proper department or the campus when they utilize this particular bid to order what's needed for their particular campus or department.
Motion's on the table.
Any further discussion? Got a motion.
Mr. Morales?
Go ahead, Mr. Michael.
I just want to say that I think this is very, very, very dangerous territory. We have a very well-documented, well-followed process where nobody sitting up here on the dais considers or qualifies these companies. There is a committee, we issue the RFP, we make sure that every single participant who responds to it meets the requirements of the RFP. There's a committee who considers the RFP submissions and approves every single one of these. We also have the disclosures. I mean, there are probably instances, and I can recall from my years on the board, there are several instances, if we sit there and think about and take action, or you know what, even worse, what we're doing right now is excluding a viable business in this community from participating in economic activity with this district. If we do that in every single instance, we're basically saying, you know what, committees, we appreciate your service, but your point is invalid. We're selectively excluding a company, and if we're gonna take that path, then you know what? We're gonna have to not consider, any single time something comes up here before the board where one of our children goes to a specific school, is that a conflict of interest? Where one of our spouses happens to work at a specific school, when there's a role or a job profile for a specific position within the district, are we gonna abstain from that, or are we gonna say, nope, you can't vote for that? There are certainly policies, there are, as a matter of fact, there are laws beyond the scope of this particular board that we're all subject to. And so I think this is a very bad path to go on. And I think it would reflect poorly on this board that we're isolating, that we're singling out one company, when clearly, as I said in the past, and I've observed in the past, when it comes to voting on any particular item where any member of this board has an interest, they abstain. And that's why the abstention exists, to avoid those conflicts.
Yeah, you guys talk about conflict of interest, everybody throws that out like it's candy, and now that we're bringing it up, all of a sudden, now it's not a conflict of interest even though he wants to abstain?
There was a motion on the table.
Any further? We're going to go ahead and vote on this. Probably going to have to go individual here. Motion was made by Mr. Pablo Barrera. A second was made by Mr. Castellano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, we've got, let's go ahead and look at the votes here. We had those in favor with Mr. Pablo Barrera, Mr. Castellano. Anyone else here? Somebody else? Okay, we have two there, and then the rest of the board. You couldn't vote, Mr. Mena? No? Miss,
He voted, he opposed.
pardon me?
He voted, he opposed. Mr. Guerra did.
He couldn't vote, Mr. Guetta couldn't vote.
I heard him, right next to him.
Mr. Guetta's vote is that he had to abstain.
But I'm telling you that he did vote.
We're gonna, obviously not gonna count that vote. The vote is not gonna be, it's abstain, he's had to abstain because his company is involved.
Actually, Mr. Morales, if we consider with the exclusion, the motion was to pass this item with the exclusion of INSCO, so there is no conflict. I believe, and Mr. Blanco may be able
With
to.
the 400,000.
So once again, we had a motion and we had a vote. Mr. Pablo Barrera voted in favor. Mr. Castellano, in favor.
Abstain.
Mr. Eddie Mena? No? Ms. Nahara? Okay, so we have a 3-2 vote there, and myself, no? And so we're going to head, all those, the motion will carry.
No, you have to make another motion.
Motion does not
The
pass.
motion failed.
Yes.
The board.
Motion to approve the item as brought by administration.
With the exception of the 400,000.
Exception or the correction, I should say, to the item to 400,000 from 300,000.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Ms. Cynthia Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
All those opposed?
Aye.
I abstain.
Well, the motion carries.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and move forward. We do have any other items?
Yes.
The 8C, I believe now that we're going to discuss. Okay. Ms. Macias?
Yes, any questions for item 2A, by board 21-004, Master's Transportation? I believe it was pulled.
The purpose of the buses, can you explain?
Yes, sir. The purpose for the buses, what we've been doing for multiple years is diversifying our transportation fleet. We have, of course, our 77 passenger buses. We have 178, and with your board approval, we had 45 new buses coming with our ESSER funds. We also have our B-type buses, which are our special needs buses that we have. And we have 12 passenger vans. Last year, we purchased an additional 7 passenger vans, which is the 12 passenger vans. When we did that, feedback from the schools, what we use the 12 passenger vans for is like for NJROTC or for golf. And what they recommended, and the reason we use those is oftentimes it's during the times where we don't have bus drivers available because it's when they're running their regular routes. So what our coaches do, or fine arts teachers or other individuals, what they do is they'll rent out the vans or they'll request the vans. However, with the 12 passenger vans, they're made to transport people. So whenever they bring, like for example, the golf clubs, usually they would do a run with just our students and then go back to get the golf clubs. So in getting feedback, what they requested is to see if we could have, or if they could have an option of a vehicle that would transport the students plus their equipment. So with this, this would help, for example, our athletics, our smaller our smaller groups when buses aren't available or our bus drivers are not available. For example, for cross country, for golf, for tennis. In fine arts, it would help, for example, our drum lines that are requested to go for activities. It's a small group of students that go, but they have their equipment. This type of vehicle would allow that flexibility. Again, first, the request would go for our transportation department, but if we don't have any transportation drivers, and in this case, monitors available, because with these 14 passenger buses, we would actually be able to afford these trips to our monitors. And again, it would be with training. Many of you all know that in our transportation department, we actually have a group that actually trains individuals that want to become bus drivers to do that. So we would train them to be able to drive these buses. And for example, CTE, they also have individual smart groups that work, our art programs, our jazz programs, whenever they have the small requests to go through. And then lastly, this also gives us the opportunity, for example, for our HANDS program. We have sometimes, we take a 77 passenger bus maybe out to the El Paso area because we go pick up our students to bring them. That would give us the opportunity to use one of these buses, smaller, to go pick up a family of 3 or 4 to bring them to our schools. So it just gives us a little bit of flexibility in increasing our fleet with this additional type of bus.
I understand we already have these buses in our fleet, but they're already marked as school buses with full DOT markings and the safety features. But they require a CDL license, and we want to purchase additional buses outside of this, but we have the buses available already.
As far as these 14 passenger buses, no, sir, we don't have that as part of our fleet.
And why are we not using our certified bus drivers or finding programs to increase the bus drivers?
Oh, definitely. And I mean,
Yes.
it's a perfect time to say, if anybody would like to become a bus driver, we have opportunities. We'll train you. We need you. Right now, that is a national shortage that we're having. So again, in this case, we're just thinking outside of the box for those small groups that oftentimes they get picked up about 1 o'clock during the day, get delivered to their function. Maybe they will not compete until 4 or 5 o'clock, and then they don't get back home till later. Usually they have about 4 hours of wait time wherever we drop them off. And in this case, it would give our flexibility. Again, our bus drivers first get that option, but if they're not available, then we have the fleet in order to get our students to where they need to be.
I understand that, but you have a certified bus driver that's trained and certified to operate, to transport our children, and you want to take that out of the equation.
No, sir. That will always
And
be
give it to
number one.
A teacher.
No, that's an option. For example, like I said, we have a fleet right now of 14 passenger vans. So we already have that option for them, and the request was to get a vehicle that instead of them having to do 2 trips, because they have to first transport the students, then the cargo, to get a vehicle that actually has the capacity to do both in one trip, because we already have that occurring.
Are these buses going to be fully designated as school buses, marked in yellow with the black tape or the black lettering?
No, these buses come in white, and then what we would do is we would put, just like our vans, we would put the wrap, the SISD logo, and that way they represent our district.
School bus, but you're not calling it a school bus.
The way that they actually
It sounds like we're trying to
designate,
get around a designation to transport children, to avoid trying to hire more drivers or to retain the
No.
ones we have. And
we need drivers.
They are certified for a reason. And they're not going to, a teacher is not going to have the same amount of experience or the driving or the certifications that a bus driver will have.
I agree. However, if we don't have a bus driver available, as I mentioned, that's where our students get transported and they wait a long time. This gives us the flexibility and tool for our students to get to those events. Again, I'm just
Yeah, I
sharing with you the
understand that,
reasoning
and
behind it.
I think the emphasis is like, well, let's buy the buses, but we need to focus on getting the bus drivers, focusing on the bus drivers. That's where the emphasis needs to be placed.
And I do want
going
to
around a regulation, a DOT regulation, and say, well, we won't decorate it as a bus, but we will, and we won't call it a school bus, but it is a school bus. And we're transporting children to a location.
And sir, that was never our intent. And just to share
Well, that's
with
what
you,
it sounds like to me, and that's why I'm bringing this up.
right. And just to give you or give HR kudos, they recently put out information, and again, I'm PRing them. If anybody out there would like to be part of our fleet, $15.50 an hour. We actually have benefits, the best benefits in town. We train on the job site to get them to get their CDL. We do need individuals to come to become bus drivers. That's our number one goal, including monitors. We need monitors. This just gives our fleet that flexibility to be able to provide and transport students when the need is available or when the need is requested. Again, our bus drivers will always come first, but when they're not available, we have this fleet able to transport our students to and from events.
I know we're investing over $360,000 in these 6 buses, but I guess my thing would be, why aren't we investing that same money into our current bus drivers in those, like they stated earlier, the salary increases for retention? I think that could be an option so that we can be a little bit more attractive than other employments like Sun Metro or other districts, so that we can have those employees and we're not running into this issue.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, as far as that salary, that's something that, again, we have to do our investigation as far as the comparability of salaries and the impact. This is a one-time purchase that we're requesting. So that's something that I'm sure that Dr. Carmona will direct us to review. I know that biannually, whenever we have TASB, they always do that TASB study to see where all of our salaried employees, bus drivers, mechanics, and I could go through how they fall within the market. That's something that I think we did that, I believe, last year. So if that's something that is requested, I'm sure that that's something that could be done. But in this case, we're looking at the one-time purchase. The other thing I do want to share, because you mentioned the amount, whenever we purchase the vans, I asked the team to see what the cost of a van at this time is. The cost of 12-passenger vans at this time is $36,000 to $42,000. So I know that was one of the concerns or questions that came up as far as the difference between these 14-passenger type A buses or a 12-passenger van. So just know that at this time, it has increased the amount of the vans.
Ms. Macias?
Yes.
So we're ordering 6 of these?
Yes.
And they're going to be stored at transportation, right?
Yes, it's going to be everything like we always do. If there is a request, just like with our vans or for a regular trip, they will submit the request. And then if it is available, like I said, we first look at our fleet of drivers to see if they're available. And if not, that's when the request goes out, where anybody that is trained at the campus, and again, we have our trainers at Transportation Department, they could be trained to actually reserve this type of vehicle, just like they do the vans.
So what you're saying that the bus drivers have preference?
Bus drivers
Then the
and our
monitors?
monitors.
Because the monitor can drive it because of the fact that it's not CDL.
Correct. And some of our monitors are already training to get their CDL, so that would be a perfect opportunity for them to get those additional hours and experience while they're practicing to get their CDL.
And so the teacher or the coach would have to go to transportation, sign that bus out, drive themselves to transportation, sign the bus out, and then drive it to the high school.
Yes, sir. And that's what we do with the vans. Whenever they request the vans, and the reason that we do that is that way those vehicles are maintained by our amazing transportation department. We make sure that when they're checked in, they're maintained. Whenever they leave, they're fueled up and they're ready to go. So that gives us that ability to ensure that our fleet is safe as it goes to and from.
I truly believe that it should be a bus driver, a certified CDL driver, because when you go driving those buses around, especially backing them up, they're not used to driving something like that. Sometimes you have to turn, you have to cut the corners a little wider than normal than a regular car. I would prefer a bus driver. I wouldn't even prefer a monitor, to be totally honest with you, because they're transporting our kids, and I'm in transportation, and they're the most precious cargo, and I truly believe that I want a professional bus driver there. That's just my concern.
Mr. Morales, if I may?
Go ahead, Mr. Nada.
I agree that if we had the option every time, it should be a bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, we are in a national, not just here in El Paso, not just Socorro District, we are in a national bus driver shortage. And I don't want to tell our students, our groups of students, whether it's fine arts or it's sports, that no, you can't go compete or you can't go to that event because we don't have a bus driver available. When my daughter was in high school, she played golf, and a golf tournament was easily 3 days. And it would be very difficult and put a very large strain on, an additional strain on our transportation department to pull a bus driver for 3 days when the golf coach could drive. We didn't have vans when they had their golf tournament, but El Paso ISD did. And we used, both teams went in the same van. You know, I don't want to tell our students, no, you can't go compete or go to an event when there is a capable adult that could drive if a bus driver is not available. I don't think that's in the best interest of our students, if there is someone who can drive if a bus driver can't.
They do not require a CDL to operate this vehicle, right?
That is correct.
So, in the same light, we shouldn't compromise safety with a trained driver to get that student to an event. We are aware that a problem can happen, and we're willing to sacrifice a licensed CDL driver for a bus for a Class C and take that risk, that liability on, and have them transport the children. You know,
I'm sorry, Mr. Dessa, does we're using buy board, right? When does it expire in the next 60 days?
With respect to buy board, the quote? Is
The
that what you're
quote.
asking? I believe so, sir.
Oh, it does?
I'd have to check, but let me find out.
President Morales, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona, members of the board. Mr. Nájera, yes, typically we request that the quotes be 30 days active, especially right now when prices are changing on a daily basis. But the contract itself should be good for another 6-7 months, I believe. But the quote itself, we would have to reissue the quotes, request quotes again if we go past the 30 days.
I have to say, in this instance, I share the concerns, and I'm, you know, like I know that we've talked about the purchase of additional buses and, you know, administrative services, but it was the full-size buses. It wasn't these smaller ones, and I just think there's too many questions. You know, like I don't understand. My first question would be: is it documented that the prioritization does go to transportation? One of the main things that jumps out to me is, you know, I've heard and I've seen our buses in accidents, and I think the worst thing I've ever seen is a bent axle. I can remember, though, probably say 3 years ago, passing by the SAC in Pine Springs and seeing one of our vans on its side. And, you know, that's coming over that hill. It's a stop sign now, but somebody ran the stop sign. You know, and so it's things like that, you know, concern me. A bus getting hit, twisted axle, students are okay. The van gets hit, it's on its side. It's a huge difference. And so I know the CDL isn't required, and I understand that, but, you know, are we requiring, you know, with the same frequency, the background checks? I can tell you, and driving record checks, and I don't know how frequently. Is it mandated? You know, I can tell you it's probably been about 3 years since I've gotten a speeding ticket, but I've got a neighbor right across the street from me with a CDL license who has never had a speeding ticket. I can't say that, but what's the difference? He has a CDL, that's his livelihood, and he's gonna do everything to protect it. You know, so that's why I was asking the question, because I think there's still a lot of unanswered items. I understand, you know, the convenience at this particular time, but with the open questions, I'm just afraid that, you know, unless those things are documented and clearly stated, and we understand, and I don't, you know, I've never talked to one of the coaches. I don't know how they feel. I can tell you that I am a lot more careful when, you know, I have someone else's kids in my vehicle because, and it's not that I'm careless with my kids in the vehicle, it's just that I'm more aware because not only do I have my children, I've got somebody else's children, and if something happens, how do I explain that? That's it's just something that no one wants to be in. Also wonder, okay, well, what's the distance? If we're going from here to Anthony, is that allowed in this bus? What about here to Fort Hancock? What about here, where do we draw the lines in those buses? In these particular buses, versus, some of the others, are these buses governed? Or are they not? If someone gets deep in thought about the strategy that they're trying to convey to the team, are they suddenly going to be going, 70 or 75? Or, if it is a long trip in some of the stretch between here and, Clint or Fabens, where you can hit 75, do we want these buses going 75? It's allowed if they're not governed. So to me, those are just the unanswered questions that I have in my mind that I would really like answers to before saying, yes, let's move forward and buy these buses right now, because I don't think we know I don't know the answers to those questions, so I'm uneasy with how we're going to use them.
There's a couple of responses that I do have based on the committee work that we did. So these buses are mainly for in-town. As far as if it was a coach or a teacher that would request, that would only be an in-town request, again, if our bus drivers or monitors that are trained are not available. And those that would be requesting these buses would also be trained by our transportation department and once they are trained, then they would be able to request. The other question, the reason that we looked at the standard 14 passenger bus is because of the safety feature. Right now, we have our, again, coaches and teachers requesting a van. So with these buses, they are much more durable compared to the van. I know that in your board packets you have the pictures, so it's truly a minibus. So as far as the pivoting and stuff like that you mentioned, and that's information that was shared during the committee meetings, it is much safer as far as for the impact. And the other one was the storage piece that I had mentioned before. And again, I do understand the questions that are available. If you'd like, I could take it to administrative services so that I can have the committee that met share with you all the details that we have. And that was the main reason we wanted it centralized through transportation. That way the request is there, and that way the request would go first. Are there bus drivers available? Are there trained monitors available? And then at that point, if not, then the request would be going to anybody that is trained at the campus level. And this is only whenever, again, those unique times where we have all our bus drivers doing the daily piece of the driving, and we don't have any dispensable to transport students to their events during the day. And it is here on, as far as in town. We can use these out of town, but at that point, the out of town would be specifically for our bus drivers to take the lead if they would transport out of town.
Motion to table this item to the next board meeting.
I've got a couple of comments, if I would. I keep my comments to a minimum normally, because our board is very intelligent, as you all know. I think the public knows that they speak well. They all have valid points, and I support each and every one of our board members. And in this case, I'd like to make a comment here, quick comment. First of all, the safety of our children is the reason why we're all here. That's first and foremost. And valid points were made about the safety of a non-certified driver driving. And I personally, as a head coach, driving from here to San Angelo in a 12-passenger van, knowing that I have to go to a tournament, stay there 2 or 3 days, I have to coach in a tournament, take my team. I have that to worry about, and yet I have to drive across half the state of Texas, and in a situation like we're talking about here. Ms. Nahada made the comment, the comment that her daughter had the same experience. So with that, I didn't feel that I was qualified. I mean, I'm a good driver. I got to say, I'm not. However, I didn't feel that was in the best interest of my students for me to drive. And I've got to. And the other thing is, we're incurring almost $500,000 to our district, okay, by purchasing these vans. That's in these times at this time right now, that's something we got to realize. So, I just wanted to make that, be upfront and make that comment, because it is important that we make the best decisions for our students and put that first and foremost. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara to table at this time, and a second by Mr. Barrera, Mr. Paulo Barrera. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll go
Thank
ahead.
you.
The motion was tabled. Thank you. We're going to move to item 9, new business. Before we move to that item, Ms. Redlinger, we have a speaker. We have that is going to talk, that would like to speak on item 9A, consider approval of resolution regarding the extension of leave for fully vaccinated employees upon contraction of COVID-19 for the entirety of the 2021-2022 school year. Our speaker at this time is Ms. Suki Moreno.
Good evening, President Morales, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona, and members of the board. My name is Suki Moreno, and I am a proud advocate of the members of West Texas Alliance. We would like to thank you for Agenda Item 9A, resolution regarding the extension of leave for fully vaccinated employees upon contraction of COVID-19 for the 21-22 school year. At a previous school board meeting, we asked you to consider this. Mr. Paul Guerra made the official request for consideration, and you listened and followed through. Although we were the first, but not the only organization to advocate for this, at the end of the day, it is not about who gets the credit, but that together we did what was right for employees. Thank you, board members. You rock.
At this time, we have Mr. Tom Redlinger to discuss or be our presenter on this particular item.
Good evening, Board President Mr. Morales, Interim Superintendent Dr. Carmona, and members of the board. I am Mr. Thomas Redlinger, Interim Chief Human Resources Officer, and on page 200 of your board packet, you will find the resolution regarding the extension of leave upon contraction of COVID-19 during the 2021-2022 school year. I will now read the resolution aloud. Resolution of the Board of the Socorro Independent School District regarding extension of leave for fully vaccinated employees upon contraction of COVID-19. Whereas the board is authorized by Texas Education Code Section 45.105 to expend the funds of Socorro Independent School District for the purposes necessary in the conduct of the public schools as determined by the board. Whereas the board acknowledges that during an epidemic, district vaccinated employees may be instructed not to report for work after contraction of COVID-19. Whereas the board finds that a need exists to address additional leave for vaccinated employees who are instructed not to report for work after contraction of COVID-19. Whereas the board concludes that providing additional paid leave to all regular, full, and part-time employees in leave accruing positions, whether contractual and non-contractual, salaried or non-salaried, who are fully vaccinated or otherwise exempt from being vaccinated as a result of a medical or other legal exemption, and instructed not to report to work due to COVID-19, serves the public purposes of protecting students and staff, maintaining morale, and reducing turnover. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District authorizes providing additional paid leave for regular, full, and part-time employees in leave accruing positions, whether contractual or non-contractual, salaried and non-salaried, who are fully vaccinated or otherwise exempt from being vaccinated as a result of a medical or other legal exemption, and instructed not to report to work during an epidemic after contraction of COVID-19. The authority granted by this resolution to provide additional paid leave for all vaccinated employees instructed not to report to work, providing additional leave for a maximum duration of up to 10 working days for the entirety of the 2021-2022 school year, unless the board takes action to increase additional leave or authorize leave for longer duration. Qualifying employees are not required to exhaust state or local leave prior to requesting and using additional leave under this resolution. This additional leave is in addition to any leave in which the qualifying employee may already be entitled. To ensure an employee exclusions from the workplace serves the public purposes of protecting students and staff. However, employees are requesting leave under the resolution must meet the following qualifications or criteria. Number one, proof of fully vaccinated or exemption status. Number two, proof of any other medical documentation necessary. Number three, information made necessary for contact tracing purposes in conformance with the public health directives, guidelines, and orders issued by the City of El Paso's Department of Public Health. Number four, qualifying employees will not be permitted to work remotely. And number five, unless otherwise exempt from being vaccinated as a result of a medical or other legal exemption, employees not vaccinated will be required to use their state or local leave for any absences related to the COVID-19 to include isolation or quarantine. Administration recommends consideration and approval of the items presented.
Approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Paul Guerra and a second from Mr. Michael Nahara. Are there any other further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. President. Item 9B.
Mr. Morales, before we move on, I want to thank Mr. Rellinger and Mr. Carmona and their team because other districts, Canutillo, I believe, only was giving 5 days. Isleta was only giving 8 days, and our district went back and gave 10 days, so thank you all.
Good job, team. Good day. We're going to move to item 9B. Consider increasing the construction material testing for East Lake Middle School, Combo School, East Lake, with Terracon Consultants Incorporated. Our presenter is Mr. Tom Eint.
Yes, President Morales, Dr. Carmona, Interim Superintendent, members of the board. This particular agenda item begins on page 201. I have brought similar things to you in the past, but administration is recommending that we increase the construction material testing at the new East Lake Combo School with Terracon in the amount of $92,204. All construction projects are required to have a third-party inspection company to conduct all the testing throughout the construction. And Terracon has offered the $92,204. It has been reviewed by the architects and the CM at risk on the job. Administration recommends approval.
Motion to approve.
I have a question here before we vote on.
Got a motion.
We had a motion.
I just want clarification on exactly the testing. What is it? If you can just explain.
That's when they pour concrete, they take slump test, they do compaction on dirt work. It's a variety of different tests throughout the whole project.
Okay, that's clarification. Thank you.
As I was.
All it was.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Who second that? Ms. Cynthia Nahara? I guess we had a further question and we took care of it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Arrington. Our next item is 9C, consider approval of notice of application to schools from the Las Vacas Meat Market and Kitchen.
Yes,
Mr.
we discussed this in the facility committee meeting, and Mr. Blanco recommends that it is required to come to the board. There are two items, this one and the next one, but we'll take the La Vaca Meat Company. They are asking permission to sell alcoholic beverages across the street from Pebble Hills.
So, thank you. I'm Steve Blanco, legal counsel for the district. Good evening, Board President Morales, Dr. Carmona, members of the board. There's two items, and we'll take them up individually. The first, for La Vaca's Meat Market, they're within 1,000 feet of Pebble Hills High School. So the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission Code requires that they notify schools, churches, and daycares when they're within that threshold, measured in a straight line from the door to the door. We are not, however, in the city of El Paso at the size where the 1,000-foot prohibition applies. So you have municipal codes from the city of El Paso that set standards for when and where you can sell alcohol and beverages or mix and make alcohol and beverages. Under the El Paso Municipal Code, they've not adopted the 1,000-foot restriction because we're only, our population is probably 780,000 now with the new census. It has to be 900,000 or more before the 1,000-foot restriction actually applies. That doesn't remove the obligation of the entity that wants to sell under the TABC rules from notifying us. On the La Vaca Meat Market, there's really not an objection that is required. You can if you want to, or you can issue them a letter that they've requested saying you don't object to it. They're going to go through the regular zoning process, and they are not subject to a municipal code prohibition against the sale of these beverages at that location. So really, La Vaca's is not an issue. I can tell you that from a legal standpoint. If you want to make it known that you object to it, we can write a letter. It will go to the City and Zoning Commission. They'll consider it. It won't carry much weight because there's not a specific prohibition. The next one there is, and I'll get into that. Does anybody have any questions about the La Vaca item?
Go ahead, Mr. Michael.
Mr. Blanco, I'm just curious because I think if I think of Myrtle Cooper, door to door, like Corralitos is right there in the corner of Zaragoza and Pelicano, as is, you know, that entire strip mall full of bars, and the only one I can think of right now is the pool place Pockets, but that's way at the other end. But it stretches all the way this way. There's a Circle K opposite Corralitos. There's, you know, a Valero, I think, right across the street. I mean, why is it that we're seeing this right now? I don't remember seeing any one of these for any one of those locations, and I'm sure that at least one of those locations is within 1,000 feet of Myrtle Cooper.
Because I think in the past when they were not within 300 feet, no, that's the next one. The next one is within 300 feet, and there's a municipal code specifically in place for that. When they're more than 300 feet within the city of El Paso, because of the size of the city, the 1,000-foot rule does not apply. And so it's really, the administration may have been choosing not to bring them to you. When Mr. Arrington and I got these, we talked about it, and I said, yeah, look, we need to tell the board that there's a requirement, there's a reason why these letters are being sent. Oftentimes, the people that are opening bars or restaurants or establishments where they want to sell alcohol will ask for support from board members. I know at other boards, people will actually call and say, hey, I'm going to be submitting this, you know, I'd really like your support and approval. It's going to employ people, it's good for the community, it might be a pizza parlor, you know, whatever it might be. And they'll ask for support because when they go before the zoning commission, it helps if you give a letter of non-opposition to it. But for La Vaca's, it won't matter because they are 1,000 feet. They're not within 300 feet.
Yeah, and La Vaca, it's not a nightclub, or it's a restaurant, right?
I believe so.
Okay, no more questions.
Motion to approve.
So if you're going to move to take action, would be to provide a letter of non-opposition to this establishment. The administration will write a letter simply saying the board considered it, does not oppose the request for a license to sell alcoholic beverages at that location. They don't. Or you can do nothing on this one. No action on this one is also appropriate.
We could take no action as a board, or we can go ahead and vote on what Mr. Blanco just. Do you want to take action?
What's your motion, Mr. Guerra?
Well, it's actually a meat marketplace. I mean, so there's no problem with them selling alcohol. The second one, I don't approve it.
Yeah, we'll take the second one
The
next.
first one, I have no problem at all.
So your options for the first one are take no action or issue a letter that you don't oppose it.
Correct.
I mean, take no action, I guess.
And the second, Mr. Okay, we're going to go ahead and make the motion that we're going to take no action by Mr. Paulguera and a second by Mr. Richard Castellano.
We don't need a motion then.
We don't need a motion? There's no action.
Okay.
Withdraw.
Okay, so the next one is a request from the museum bar, which is a bar, to sell alcoholic beverages on a premises that's within 300 feet of Myrtle Cooper. So the El Paso Municipal Code specifically has a general prohibition that says an entity is not permitted to sell alcoholic beverages if you are within 300 feet of a school, a church, or certain daycares. They have the option, and what they've done here is exercise their option to come to the entity, in this case, us as a school district, to ask us not to object. If we give them a letter saying we don't object and we don't oppose it, they will then take that to the Planning and Zoning Commission and say, okay, this prohibition under the municipal code should not be applied to us because we have approval from the school district. I think there's also a daycare that they're going to have to address, but that's separate. That's not our issue. They are asking us specifically to issue them a letter saying we do not oppose it. If we issue that letter, they can use that to claim an exception under the current municipal code standard that says you cannot sell alcoholic beverages within 300 feet of a school or a daycare. So this one you do have to decide. You either will issue them the letter saying you do not oppose, or you will say no, you do oppose.
Comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Nod.
Mr. Blanco, so this is one of those that does surprise me because I looked at it specifically, and while in principle, I agree that selling alcohol within 300 feet of a school is not a good idea, right? But that's also why we have laws, and they should be enforced, and we should be asking for ID. But I understand all the dangers associated with people who have had too much to drink, etc. My issue with this particular one is the areas that I just mentioned to you, or that I brought up, are all closer than this one location here. In that area, we have Corralito Steakhouse, we have the Work Bar, we have Tacotote who sells alcohol, we have Pockets, we have Mariscos Culiacan, we have El Muchacho Alegre. There's that entire strip mall is full of, not El Mariachi Alegre, okay? So that, and there's more, that I think 1810 is there, maybe the 9th hole. I live right by there.
Someone's been venturing.
I can't tell you what the inside of those places look like, but, and that was can't, okay, cannot. But, so anyways, so I can understand how this could be a concern, but, I think that we gotta be consistent.
Yeah, and I can't speak to how those entities receive their zoning exemptions. There's a process. They go through a public zoning commission hearing and planning commission hearing, and there are other ways that they can secure an exemption. And if they exist, and if they were built after Myrtle Cooper was built, I think the school's been there for a while, they would have had to secure some form of exemption, and maybe they did it without coming to the school district and asking for a letter. But we have the opportunity, if you want to say yes, you can say yes. If you want to say no, you oppose it, you can say no, you oppose it. And it'll be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I want to oppose something where we have Corralito Steakhouse, that has been there maybe the last 3-4 years, so, and that is, half the distance between Myrtle Cooper and this one location. And so if it was new construction, like our new elementary schools, I clearly understand opposing it, but you know, in this particular instance, I would hate to be, you know, a barrier, you know, to someone who just wants to start their own business, you know, and clearly there's enforcement in that area because it's not going to be the only location. So, I mean, that's how I feel.
I have a question. What time is the bar going to operate? What are their operating hours?
Oh, I do not know. Do not know. I mean, if it's a bar, I mean, El Paso has rules. You can open at certain times. You have to close by 2 a.m. I know that because I've been to a bar or two.
Yeah. Corralitos opens for breakfast. Pockets is open for lunch, and they're all Carnitas Querétaro, Tacotote. They're, you know, open for breakfast and lunch.
I mean, most of those are just more restaurants, so I can see it's.
Well, except Pockets.
Motion to move on the letter?
Yeah, we need a
motion to submit a letter that we don't oppose, based on the reasoning that I've provided. That's clearly not the only location that's there.
I'll second.
We'll go ahead. We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahan and a second by Mr. Castellano, Richard Castellano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Blanco. Mr. Ryan.
We'll have to draft. Yeah.
Our next item is E, discussion and possible action regarding construction of Socorro ISD Student Activities Complex 2. Mr. Ianton?
Yes, we received 4 proposals on the student activity complex back on the due date, and the committee met to provide the ranking, and I believe all that information was forwarded to y'all in a Friday packet. And tonight we are asking the board to consider the recommendation of the ranking that we came up with based on the criteria that was put into the package. And the criteria consisted of price, experience, quality goods and service, past relationships, safety record, and ability to meet the needs. We, as I stated, met, and as per the Section 2269 Government Code, and we ranked the firms and based on that criteria. Now, the cost is a little bit higher than what we anticipated. So we've got some work to do with it. And my estimates that when this bond was put together in 2016, the numbers, we had 62,500,000 in there for the SAC, and an additional $5 million in there for the sports lighting. The sports lighting is being completed, and we have some savings on that. However, the project is over budget, like I stated, or over our original budget based on our 2016 bond estimate. I contribute most of that overage to COVID. And if you look at the numbers, and they varied, the 4 bids were relatively tight with the exception of one that was a little bit, the highest bidder was a little bit high. But if you looked at the original numbers that were presented, one was under 60 million, 59 million and something, and the next one was relatively close to that. And it was within 1% of the low bid. And if you went to the second one, it was around the 2%. So we didn't have a range of 60 million and 100 million. Mm-hmm. You know, everything was relatively tight. So we felt like scope-wise, it was understood when the four vendors put their numbers together. But I am estimating that this is a majority of a concrete job, a lot of reinforcing steel, a lot of structural steel, a lot of steel panels, and those are the items that have been impacted mostly about COVID. And I would say anywhere from 2016 to current, anywhere from 20 to 25% increase. So right there, if you took 60 million and 25% of that is 15 million, if my math is correct. So if we bid it in 2016, we would have been under budget. Unfortunately, nobody knew COVID was going to hit in 2016. We always allow for escalation in the cost, but we did not foresee COVID hitting us. So administration is recommending, let me get to my notes, that we rank the committee rank the firms in this order. Number 1 is Baines General Contractor. Number 2 is Dantech's General Contractor. Number 3 is Hensel Felth Construction Company. Number 4 is Harrington Construction, LLC, doing business as HB Construction. Administration would recommend that you approve those ranking, and then what it allows per the code that we can start negotiation with that number 1 firm. And if we negotiate a number, whatever that number might be, bring it back, it has to come back to the board for approval. If we don't reach any agreeable number, then we cease and desist with number 1 and go to number 2, and we can't go back to number 1. However, we've never gone past number 1 in the past. Administration feels like, yes, it's over budget. We understand that. Yes, we know that it's majority of it's based on COVID. If we decide to wait, I think the prices are still going to escalate up. So our administration recommendations would be that we start with board approval by ranking the firms, as I stated, and we begin negotiation with the number 1 ranked firm, and we bring back our recommendation at that time, depending on how much we can, get cost analysis out of the project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Good. We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Mr. Paul Guerra. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Arrington.
My last item.
And the next item goes to you, discussion and possible action to repave the east and west parking lots at Montwood High School, District 1, Mr. Eddie Mena. Go ahead.
Yes. Here is a site plan of the 2 parking lots. The orange one is the one on the east side, I believe, and the yellow is the west, if I got my north and south correct. We've asked BTC to come back with proposals on what it would take to redo those 2 parking lots as indicated. And the proposals are $500,000 for the one in the orange and $400,000 for the other one. This has come up before in our facility committee meeting, but my suggestion was that we wait till the exterior construction that we were doing in front of Mont would be complete, and there wouldn't be that much more heavy machinery and stuff on the parking lots. So we do have some cost savings at Montwood that could go towards these 2 parking lots if the board desire. So we discussed it a little at Facility Committee and are bringing this proposal to the board for recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Eddie Mena and a second by Mr. Michael Nahara. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Mr. Arrington, I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, as it is, you know, there's been a lot of construction there at Montwood, and the parking lots are aged, of course. I mean, it's you know, was our second high school to Socorro, certainly, but not only is it, you know, pretty hard on the vehicles coming in and out, but, you know, if you're walking in the parking lot, it's also dangerous. And we know that our bands, you know, practice in those parking lots as well. So I certainly appreciate this, you know, being brought before us and the fact that it's going to get done. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, the motion was, go ahead, Mr.
I agree with Mr. Nagata. Took the words right out of my mouth. It actually hurts to walk in that parking lot. It's the original parking lot since the school was constructed. It's almost gravel. So it was something that was very needed in that school. And thank you, Tom, for finding the money to.
Yeah, the only thing is, you know, now we'll have to schedule it, you know, during some breaks and stuff, because the one on the big one has the band marching field on it, and it's going to get restriped and everything as it is now. So once we redo it.
Yep. Any further discussion? We're going to go ahead and recap. We have a motion by Mr. Paul Guerra and a second by Mr.
No.
Oh, you made the motion. Here we go. The motion was made by Mr. Eddie Mann and a second by Mr. Michael Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is 8G, discussion. Let me make sure I got item 9G, discussion and possible action to amend approval stipend pay schedule. Mr. Steve Blanco.
Thank you, Board President Morales, Dr. Carmona, members of the board. This item has been brought to the board because it was brought to the administration's attention by one of our board members that a stipend was added to the stipend pay schedule under the professional stipends for principals to amend the stipends and include a new stipend. It's important to know that this is a new stipend. It isn't something that existed. It isn't something that the board approved. It was a campus excellence stipend at an assigned value of $13,000 on an annual basis. Board policy requires that all compensation be included as part of the compensation plan and the budget. It's local policy DEAA and local policy DEA deal with this. So the administration does not have singular authority to amend or change the stipend plan or program. It has to come to the board. It's my understanding that the administration does want to include this stipend on the stipend pay schedule, and there's funds for it within the budget. It can be paid. They desire to have it to be paid as a recruiting tool and a compensation tool. It can't be paid, however, unless and until the board considers and approves it. So it's my understanding, and it's the recommendation of administration, that the stipend pay schedule be amended and revised to include a new stipend under professional stipends for principals as a campus excellence stipend for an assigned value of $13,000 per year. It would be awarded to the individuals that qualify for the criteria for that stipend. So to go forward, if you want to award the stipend, the board needs to act on it. It's covered by policy, and I think that's pretty clear. So we're asking the board to consider that. Any questions?
Yeah, I had brought it up at the last meeting, but it was under regulation, and they said we couldn't bring it up and speak to it. And under the compensation plan, you know, like as you discussed, it has to be approved. It appears that this is the way Cabinet has done it in the past. That was mentioned in the Friday packet. This The stipend is mentioned, the cabinet approves it, and it doesn't come before the board. And that's the way it's been done in the past. So this stipend here questions, and that statement goes, how many more have been passed like that in the past?
That's a good question. So when that was brought up, I had conversations with staff and asked, and I think the confusion surrounds the master budget. So the stipends pay schedule is a regulation. It's developed and approved by the administration and is brought forth as part of the compensation plan. The board has to approve it.
Yes.
The administration doesn't have the authority to just pay out money to whoever they want to. It has to go through the compensation program. So that's done. I think the confusion lies in that you have stipends on the stipend pay schedule that exist but might not be paid out during the year. Here's an example. You have a person who may be in a position as a teacher and then promoted to assistant principal, or from assistant principal promoted to principal. When they move to a new job, the new job and their qualifying criteria may make them eligible for a stipend that exists. They might not have been receiving that stipend. I'm working as a teacher. I don't get the assistant principal stipend X, Y, or Z, call it whatever you want. When I get promoted, I'm now eligible for it. Internally, because that is approved, that's a stipend that exists and it's approved as part of the compensation plan, it's budgeted. When I move into that position, the stipend becomes mine. I get it paid. Might be for a coach. You hire a coach and the coaching stipend for baseball is X or for football is Y. And when that person comes on as a coach, that person, the individual employee, is not brought before the board to consider whether you're going to pay that person a stipend. The administration looks at the regulation and says, okay, you're eligible for this stipend, they adjust your salary and your pay, and it happens because it was pre-approved by the board on a conceptual basis as part of your budget. This, when I started, I said this is a new stipend. This is something that was brand new and created, and the board had not had a chance to consider it as part of the budget and compensation plan. So because that didn't happen, you have to do that. You can award it, you can allow the amendment of the compensation plan and include the stipend, or you can choose not to. But it's up to the board to make that determination.
The stipend was written in back in August. It was presented to the policy committee in
September.
And here we are in October. Has the stipend been paid out to the individual, any individual?
I don't know the direct answer to that question.
Good evening, Board President, Mr. Morales, Interim Superintendent, Ms. Carmona, and the board members. Yes, the one payment of the end of September to the individual was paid out, and that's the only payment that's been made out of the stipend item.
Yeah, I'm assuming that when the
took office, or he took the position in the middle of August.
I'm assuming when the error was discovered, the payments, they can't go forward. I can,
Yes.
from a legal perspective, without the board authorizing it, that individual won't continue to receive the stipend. The board would have to approve it.
And because it involves tax dollars, was that legal?
It's not, I don't think it's illegal in the sense that there's not an idea that somebody was trying to commit a fraud or misuse of public funds. It certainly did not follow policy. I mean, the board policies under DEAA and DEA are clear that the superintendent shall recommend a stipend pay schedule as part of the annual compensation plan of the district. It has to include a list. It's by regulation because the administration comes up with it, but it has to be approved by the board.
In the HR policy committee meeting, again, it was presented where cell phone stipends, originally in the original annual compensation plan shows two groups of stipends. And when they presented again, they wrote it in, but no update on the policy stating, and it went into like 40 categories now of cell phone stipends. And it says it was approved by cabinet.
I don't know how these cell phone stipends are allocated, but I can say this. You could have a master group and say, we're going to have cell phone stipends for this category of people. These are the amounts. If you fall within that category, you're entitled to it.
In the annual compensation plan approved in April. But it was also part of that same date of August, but presented just recently, this last HR committee meeting.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. It could be this being done by a group or a budget. The two things that matter are that there's a budget that's prepared as part of the budgeting process, or it has to be a compensation plan. You need to know what you're going to spend, obviously, and the board has to approve it. That could be a master item. You might say, I'm not saying that you all do this, but some districts do. You might say we are going to spend for cell phones a maximum amount not to exceed $100,000 per quarter. And then they'll break them out. You can do that. I'm not saying you all do that, but you can do that. Or you can do it by position. Principal gets this, assistant principal gets this, coordinator gets this.
Yes, it was done by position, and then they added, it was like 37 other positions.
Were they new positions to receive cell phone
Well, it
stipends?
wasn't listed before in the compensation plan.
No. Let me see if I can give a little clarification to that. With the way the compensation plan and the budget is set, the cell phone stipends that you're referring to have always been paid and are in the compensation plan. We made them part of the regulation because the way the procedures have been brought is any cell phone stipend would need to come to cabinet for approval.
Yes.
But if they're already being paid for by that particular position, cabinet made the decision, go ahead and add them to the regulation.
The groups were not listed. This is a public document, but the groups were not listed in that document. Now there's, and it's one of these boring meetings that nobody pays attention to, but now they're listed. And any taxpayer would question, was this approved by the board? These other 37, 36 positions to receive stipends, phone stipends.
Yes, sir. Yes, they're part of the compensation, and they're not new at all. All those, the ones that are listed are not new
Where
cell
would it
phone
be
stipends.
listed that they were approved and when? That's the whole thing there, I'm asking. They weren't listed before.
I just want to say very simply that what we do is we get the stipend list, we determine the amount that's needed to be included in the budget, and those stipend amounts are in various line items of the budget that's adopted by the board. But the stipend list itself might have an aggregate, or before it had an aggregate amount, it might say cell phone for this category, and it might have like 20 positions. So we would total up that amount and make sure that's included in the budget. So to the extent that the board adopts the budget, the stipend amounts are within those budgets, and so.
It's not the budget, it's the annual compensation plan that's approved by the board that it wasn't listed in.
Yeah, but I think what Mr. Ressa is saying, to my understanding, is that some of those are aggregate numbers, and they
Well,
might not be breaking them out, but if you want
Cell phone
them.
stipends are paid out of the budget of the campuses or the different.
Yeah, so it may be a
wouldn't
total.
aggregate it. It would be the individual campus, but to determine that one person can get this should be listed. Well, now it's listed, but how long has this been going on where? we
Yeah,
inform the
for
taxpayer?
individual stipends, I don't know if those are listed. It's
It's
up
not
to the
individual,
board.
it's group, per group.
Yeah, if the board wants to see that, I can tell you this, if somebody were to ask, give me a list of everybody who's receiving a cell phone stipend, it's public information, we'd provide a list. The district would have to answer that question. Whether or not that is published as part of the budget, as opposed to what Mr. Ressa is saying in the compensation plan, stipends, cell phones, $25,000, stipends, coaching, $150,000. In the compensation plan, that might not be broken out, but it has to be approved. So when you add a new one like this,
Yes.
it's not in the budget. It was not in the compensation plan, it's new money. And I use this example, this would never happen, but just imagine that at some point in time, school district administration got together and said, we're gonna give everybody who's been here for 10 years $1 million stipend. So, well, we can do that because it's a regulation. You can't do that. That has to come before the board. Compensation are matters that the board controls. And so when you're making something new, it's not part of the budget, it needs to be in there. Now, if you're asking a different question, you want to see it broken out with more detail, sure. I think that can be a directive to the administration to give us a breakout list and show it as part of the compensation plan so you can see everything. It's going to be a lot of detail.
But there's nothing to show that these were already approved in the past. These additional cell phone stipends were approved in the past.
I'm going to assume that they were.
Yes.
Yeah,
There are no.
then why were they added then? It's like, you're just, it's like the, it's in regulation and just.
I totally understand the point. The concern is that, well, if it happened with this one, did it happen with, 2 others, 5 others, 10 others, where compensation was just added on without board approval? It shouldn't. Legally, that should not happen. Did it happen in the past? I can't answer that question. We can certainly go back and audit that and check it and see if that exists. But all I can tell you is it has to be part of the compensation plan.
It has to be part.
Has to be.
It has
Yes.
to be, and
Yes.
that was my argument last time in this one, and it's not listed in there. You've paid out on this other, the principal stipend, and it wasn't approved, and that's a concern. It's still tax dollar that was paid without approval here. Even when I brought it to the attention, and it was laughed at, but it's
No,
important. These are tax dollars.
Yeah, no, when we received it, I didn't laugh. We took it seriously. We made sure that we looked into it. So, again, I would just say that for tonight, because this has been something the administration wants to pay and offer, the board has to decide if you want to approve it.
Okay, and if now on the stipend itself, can you explain what it is?
My understanding is that it is designed off of a model from other districts to recruit and retain individuals for particular positions. We don't talk about individuals in open forum, but for certain hard-to-fill principal positions at schools that maybe have struggled in the past, the idea is you'll recruit talent. I think anytime you pay a stipend or you're paying additional money, you should look at it with the idea that it's designed to retain or recruit somebody. Why are you paying somebody extra money? Well, they have a value. They're adding something to the district. And the idea behind this, my understanding is that it makes a position more attractive and you recruit better, talented people that would likely be retained and stay. That's the purpose behind it. Now, is that actually effective? You won't know until you go down the road with whoever receives the stipend and evaluate them as an employee.
Now, the determination of who receives a stipend is not written anywhere. It's not listed.
Well, the stipend will be designed for that purpose, and you have to qualify for it.
And
it doesn't.
The number of stipends aren't listed for it. It's $13,000, and it could be unrestricted and say, hey, all 49 people need this campus, and
No.
excellence award. See, and that's the problem.
That's a
there.
very
There's
good.
not-
That's
no
a very good
restriction.
point. You would run afoul of the budget requirements. So if the administration wanted to do that and say we want to make this stipend of $13,000 available to 10 people, the amendment would be $130,000 to the budget. Mr. Ressa would be here saying we can't pay that. We don't have that in our budget. It's not budgeted funds. You can't do that. That's different than my example of somebody qualifying for an already budgeted stipend to be a coach, to receive a cell phone, to be promoted, one of those. This is a single amount of $13,000 because it's going to apply to a particular position.
Then it needs to be designated as a single amount. It says as assigned.
I believe the criteria for it is, but without identifying the person that it would apply to,
Yes.
I can't say.
So the campus would have to be identified as, the words you used?
The qualifying criteria would be for a particular campus. In my understanding, this is geared towards one particular campus.
Yes. So the campus is in its state because the oversight from here did not allowed it to get to that point. And we're asking the taxpayers now to pay an additional $13,000 to correct the mistakes.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment, I understand the point, but I can't speak to whether or not that's why people have left or why people have not been hired or recruitment's been difficult. All I can tell you is my understanding that the idea behind the stipend is to recruit and retain people. I mean, it's a very common approach.
If we designate a principal to get this stipend because of this campus and the terms you used, do we start paying that to the teachers at the campus? Because they're working at the campus, that's hard, that fits that definition.
Not for this particular item, that would not apply. That would be something else down the road.
I do have to say that this particular item concerns me as it's being presented because it sounds to me like it's a pay-for-performance thing, and we the history of pay for performance and districts that surround us is not lost on me. It wasn't too long ago where just that type of approach just encourages the wrong type of behavior, I think. I think if our principals are underpaid, we should evaluate that. I think the fact that we're a great district with great benefits should be an attraction enough. And I think that if there is a particular school, whether it be a high school, an elementary school, or any of our schools that is underperforming, the appropriate resources should be dedicated to support that campus. I don't like the idea of a stipend for somebody to try and improve a campus, again, because it provides just, the wrong motivation.
And I know you mentioned earlier, like pretty much added value, and I know in the past board meeting, we did talk about added value. So is this one of those conditions where it's added value?
My understanding, that's the idea behind it. I mean, I know it's modeled off of another district, not within the city. The idea being that if you have a school that you think needs better recruitment tools to attract and retain somebody that you want to lead that school, if you offer a stipend, it's additional pay. There's no doubt about that.
Then I think it goes back to the same thing when he talks about the teachers. I mean, that would be added value for the teachers as well.
Completely understand the point. Unfortunately, that's not the item, and I'm not meaning to argue with the board, but the item is only whether you want to award a stipend for this particular position. If you don't, then the answer is don't. Vote not to do it. If you want to and you want to allow the administration to do it, you can, but that has to be controlled by the board. The point and the reason this came forward was Mr. Castellano identified it and said, hey, how can we pay this? We looked into it and we said, you can't. My opinion was you cannot pay it. You can't pay it until the board approves it. So it's, in your hands to decide if you want to continue to pay it.
Motion to return this item to the appropriate committee, either HR or Finance.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahada, what he mentioned, and a second by Ms. Cynthia Nahada. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I got one more thing. Wouldn't it have to also go to policy?
Any appropriate committee.
That would
be.
You're correct, Mr. Barrett. I designated 2 specific committees, but my intent was any appropriate committee. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for clarifying that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
I'm going to stay here.
Gotcha.
Next one.
Item 9H, discussion and possible action to extend supplemental duty agreement between Socorro ISD and Marta C. Carmona to serve as the interim superintendent. Presenter, Mr. Steve Long.
Thank you. By way of update for the board, in June 2021, actually June 1st of 2021, Dr. Carmona signed her supplemental duty agreement to serve as the acting superintendent, interim superintendent of Socorro Independent School District. In that initial agreement, we set and the board approved a 6-month anticipated period. It specifically says the following: and the employee agrees to perform the supplemental duty of acting superintendent beginning May 25th, 2021 for a 6-month anticipated period or until the district enters into a contract with a superintendent, whichever occurs first. It's the whichever occurs first language that requires us to take action on this agreement. At that time, there were some suggestions and thoughts that there might be a fast approach to filling the position, quick interviews, not using a search firm, and hiring somebody as superintendent. Obviously, the board has chosen not to do that. I mean, you've retained a search firm. You're going through the search and review process, which takes some time. So we're no longer able to use that 6-month period. Because it has a 6-month clock on it, that will expire in November. The administration brought it to our attention, and it was my suggestion that we get this to the board so the board can make a decision to extend Dr. Carmona's agreement. The extension would be to extend it for a going forward period until the district enters into a contract with a superintendent or other action is taken by the board. It's not, and no offense, but it's not a guarantee of always being employed in that position. It's until the board hires a superintendent or takes other action on the contract. That would allow you a longer open-ended period to deal with the search and continue to have Dr. Carmona as the superintendent.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Ms. Cynthia Nahara. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
This item's, I believe you're, Mr. Blanc, you have any? Okay, I'm sorry, I thought maybe you had a more comment. This item falls on my lap here. Item 9I, consider reappointment of individuals to the El Paso Central Appraisal District Board of Directors for 2022-2023 term. As per state law, the 2020 to 2021 term for the El Paso Central Appraisal District Board of Directors concludes on December 31st, 2021. The new term begins January 1st, 2022, and runs through December 31st, 2023. However, all the members serve until they have been reappointed and replaced. In this particular instance, I believe Mr. Eddie Mena has been our representative. He's done an outstanding job, and I feel that we can continue if we can agree to reappoint him.
I thought we had two.
May be in the best interest of our board.
Question.
Go ahead, sir.
At one point, we had two. Do we still have two, or is it just one now?
It's just one, I believe it's just one. We did have two at one time, but I think Mr. Walter Miller sits on there now from Horizon City.
Oh, I see. Well, Mr. Mena, I used to serve on that board, so if you ever get tired, sir, you can count on me.
So,
Motion to
We have a
reappoint
motion.
Mr. Mena?
Yes, we have a motion. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Mr. Richard Castellano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. We're going to now go to item 10, executive session. The meeting is to be closed for consultation with legal counsel to consider the level 3 grievance appeal filed by DE to discuss personnel and real estate matters, for discussion regarding duties of interim superintendent to include communication with board trustees, and to consider administrative recommendations for principal positions at Lujan Chavez Elementary School, Walter E. Clark Middle School, assistant principal positions for SSG Manuel R. Fuentes Middle School, El Dorado High School, Montwood High School, and the director of attendance promotion, placement, and retention under Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074. We will move to executive session. The time is 8:13. Sorry about that. That golf. We are back in session. The time is 9:21. We got 11 new business. Discussion and possible action regarding the Level 3 grievance appeal filed by DE. Our presenter is Mr. Steve Blanco.
Thank you, Board President Morales, Dr. Carmona, members of the board. In the September meeting, you received the package, which was the record, the documents, exhibits, and the employee's presentation regarding the Level 3 grievance appeal. You had it from that meeting to this meeting for the board to consider it. We briefly discussed a recount of the grievance in closed session. I understood that the board had a couple of questions which we answered. At this, at this time, the board needs to decide how to resolve the grievance. You can do one of three things. One, take no action. If you take no action, that leaves the decision by Dr. Quattrini at Level 3 in place. Two, you can grant some of the relief in part, or three, you can grant the relief in whole. Based on our discussion, I believe that the board is leaning towards taking no action. So if there's no action to be taken, there will be no motion. Does anybody have a motion to make on this item? Okay, with that, I understand that there will be no action taken. Thank you.
No action to be taken. Item 11B, consider approval of administrative recommendations. Carmona, our first position is Principal Lujan Chavez Elementary School.
President Morales and members of the board, administration recommends Brenda Mills to assume the role and responsibilities as the new principal of Lujan Chavez Elementary School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Michael Nahara and a second by Mr. Eddie Mena. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Our next position, Principal Walter E. Clark Middle School.
President Morales and members of the board, administration recommends Yvonne Avila to assume the role and responsibilities as the new principal of Captain Walter E. Clark Middle School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Eddie Mena and a second by Mr. Michael Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Our next position, item 11B2, Assistant Principal, A, SSG Manuel R. Puentes Middle School. Ms. Carmona.
President Morales and members of the board, administration recommends Sonia Duffy to assume the role and responsibilities as the new assistant principal of Sergeant Manuel R. Puentes Middle School.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion was made by Ms. Cynthia Nahara and a second by Mr. Eddie Mena. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Next position, 2B El Dorado High School, Assistant Principal.
No.
She's go ahead, Ms. Carmona. She's going to go ahead and clarify
President
that.
Morales and members of the board, administration recommends reposting the position for assistant principal at El Dorado High School.
To clarify, the position has been reposted, or will be reposted. Item 2C, the Montwood High School position, Assistant Principal.
President Morales and members of the board, administration recommends Mr. Casey Rangel to assume the role and responsibilities as the new assistant principal of Montwood High School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Eddie Mena and a second by Ms. Cynthia Nahara. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. And our final position, Director of Attendance, Promotion, Placement, and Retention. Ms. Carmona.
President Morales and members of the board, administration will pull this recommendation for a later time.
This time, we'd like to go ahead and adjourn our meeting. There's no further business for this board. The meeting is adjourned. The time is 9:25.